Cold cases are very difficult to solve. You don't have the original crime scene. You may not have new evidence. You may not have new leads. But I've always said that the answer is in the original file, that the investigators who do the original investigation will have spoken to the killer. So when I started the reinvestigation into the murder and rape of 6-year-old Bonnie Clark from 1982, I knew one thing, that the answer would be in the file. The body of a man on the front seat which was badly burned. We don't know whether he's been shot, we don't know whether he's been stabbed. It's a horrific act, and any death is tragic. A total of 9 shots were fired.
The best detectives Victoria's ever seen.
I don't intend to stop until someone's brought to justice. Failure is not an option. Was around 1999, we established a cold case unit to look at unsolved cases within the homicide squad. As a result of that, Dennis Clark rang me up and he said, look, I'd like you to look at my daughter's death. It was 1982, she was a 6-year-old that was murdered in her bed. I drove out to Dennis's house in Preston, which was a Ministry of Housing house, and Dennis lived there on his own. He was a very small-framed man, smoked rolly cigarettes nearly non-stop, but we sat at the kitchen table, and I remember him actually getting a photograph in a frame of Bonnie and saying, well, that's my daughter. He said, listen, Ron, I would love you to reinvestigate this. I'm dying of cancer and I don't have that long to live. I can't tell you whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but before I die, I'd like to see some answer. And he said to me, Ron, I know you didn't work on the original case, but I hope that you can solve it for me. I think as investigators, this is where it becomes very difficult not to be emotionally involved. But I remember shaking his hand and I said I would go back and look at the file.
I realised how emotional Ron had become after speaking to the dad. He'd actually told me the conversation and he felt like he should try really hard for this man. And I think, you know, for the father of Bonnie Clark, he just couldn't rest until he found out who did this to his daughter. I think any murder of a child is so traumatic. It's so devastating to the families and, you know, the old cliche is you shouldn't bury your children before you. How she died was terrible.
I went back to the office and I got the box files. When we investigate a homicide, if it's not solved, we put the file in a cardboard box. They become unsolved homicides. They have a number on it. I think it's pretty sad that a number ultimately represents a human being's life. They sit in a compactus and at times they gather dust. They might sit there for 10, 15 or 20 years. But I think as investigators, we need to reopen those cases. We need to wipe the dust off the top. We need to allow the victim to have a voice. Because I think it is sad when all it is a number that represents a life. And then you start to go through the file. So Tim Day was a new detective at the office. And I said to Tim, I've made a commitment to Dennis. What I want you to do is to go through this file and we'll see if we can actually work out what happened. Bonnie was living with her mum, Marion. Marion was divorced and separated from her husband, Dennis. And from time to time, Marion took in boarders to help make ends meet. Bonnie was just like any 6-year-old girl. She was vibrant, she was excited. Christmas was nearly there, we're only 2 or 3 days away. There was that sense of enjoyment. Father Christmas was coming. I can picture the house. It's semi-detached. It's got a passageway that runs down the side. It was just a quaint little cottage in Northcote. Her mum, Marion, says that, it was a normal night. Bonnie had gone to bed, and before Marion went to bed, she went in and Bonnie was asleep, and she re-tucked her in just like some mothers do.
I cleaned up the dishes and whatnot and headed off to bed myself and sort of stuck my head in the door. So I went past. No, love. Yeah, no, Mum. I think it was about 1 o'clock-ish in the morning or something like that. I got up to go to the loo and she heard me and she sort of sat up and said, I want a drink of water. Okay, fine. So I gave it to her and went back to bed. It was probably just after 7. I walked past her room, stuck my head in the door. She appeared to be asleep. Wandered off to the shower. So, come out. I'm sort of thinking, that's funny, you haven't moved. And I've been, had the shower going, the radio's on, and we're banging around. And then I noticed how pale she looked. So I went in. There was something wrong. Pulled the bedclothes back. She was naked. She had this hole in her chest. It was obvious somebody had tried to wipe it up. There was blood, tiny little trickle of blood, but the rest of it was smeared as if somebody tried to clean it up. And I just sort of dropped the doona and I don't know how long I stood there for, but just frozen, and rang 000.
So when the homicide squad arrived at Bonnie's house, it was already set up as a crime scene. There were photographs taken of Bonnie's bedroom, which shows that she was in bed, she didn't have pyjamas on, and she'd been sexually assaulted. She had a single stab wound to the chest. And it appeared to the detectives that Bonnie's body had been washed. Then beside the bed and the wall, they found her pyjamas stuffed down the side of the frame.
"31-year-old Marion Clark, a part-time student, told police she put her daughter to bed early last night. Mrs. Clark said she didn't hear any strange noises during the night. This morning she made the gruesome discovery in Bonnie's bedroom at the rear of the house. Mrs. Clark was sleeping in a front bedroom.
Even though I wasn't one of the original investigators into the murder of Bonnie Clark, I know how difficult it is for investigators to go into a house or to go to a crime scene where there's children. I'm a father, and when you recreate what happens there, it's a visual thing that never leaves you. So I know how difficult it is for an investigator to actually investigate the death of a little baby or a child. You didn't see the victim, you saw your own child. So probably over the last 15 years of my experience at the Homicide Squad, my children had grown up. So if we went to a case where there was a young baby or a 2 or a 3-year-old, I was conscious that those who work with me had children of that age. So in the end, I went myself rather than put them through it. Looking deeper into the original investigation into the death of Bonnie, it was clear that Dennis was a suspect from day one. Dennis was her father. We know that 98% of murders committed by someone known to the victim. But as we looked deeper, it was clear Dennis had an alibi. He was at home in Preston and it could be proved that he was home. So the original investigators were able to eliminate him within 48 hours of her death. But Bonnie's mum, Marion, was far from being off the hook. There were 3 good reasons. 1, the dog didn't bark. 2, there was no forced entry to the house. And 3, the neighbours didn't hear anything. So that goes into their theory that the mum is involved, saying, ha, whoever's responsible must know the dog. No one else living there at the time other than Marion. Marion must be involved. She staged the crime scene.
Sitting there in the next room to my daughter's body while forensic people are running in and out, and being accused of your child's murder, it would have to be the lowest point of my life. I mean, bad enough that my daughter is lying there. It's obvious she's been stabbed, strangled and raped. There was marks on her neck. And you're looking at that and then somebody's telling you that you're involved in it. Can things get any worse? Yes, they can.
Part of it was, I think, the fact that from time to time, Marion had left Bonnie at home with somebody at the house, and they just took the view that maybe she wasn't a fit and proper mother. Now, when we've gone back through the file, I look at it and think, I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion. So they thought that the sexual assault was a staged crime scene. In other words, they were thinking Marion has stabbed her, and then Marion's thinking, aha, what am I going to do here to throw the police off the scent? I know, I will digitally assault her, myself as the mother, so that they don't think it's me.
I I have always been raised to respect the law and the police and to cooperate, and that's what I thought I was doing. So I thought I had been doing, except that my cooperation was leading to me digging myself into a deeper hole. I got to the stage where I just did not trust them, did not want to talk to them, did not want anything to do with them.
Keith Moore, a journalist from the Herald Sun, wrote an article to say that we now had a cold case unit.
We ran this picture of Bonnie sitting on Santa Claus's knee, which is one that really hits people in that she just had a photograph taken shortly before she was murdered. And it really tugs at your heartstrings when you think, that cute little girl's raped and murdered. And that one paragraph led to a phone call the next morning. It was Paige Train sitting at my desk, and it rings, and it's a bloke. And he said, "Oh, you're the bloke that wrote the story about the cold case squad?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, my girlfriend was just reading the paper, and she got really emotional and started crying and turned to me and said, 'I think I know who did it.'" I then say, "You shouldn't be telling me, you should be telling Ron Iddles."
Bonnie Clark was 6 years old. She was murdered and raped in her own bed. 20 years on, her father, Dennis, contacted me. He had a dying wish. "Would you reinvestigate the death of my daughter?" As a result of that, the Herald Sun wrote an article. And we had a lead. A young girl rang journalist from the Herald Sun, Keith Moore, up. Her name was Kylie Ward. Kylie eventually came to the homicide squad and had a conversation. She said, "I was the same age as Bonnie. We went to school together. And after school, I would go to Bonnie's house." She said, "There was a man who lived at the house who was a boarder. Marion, who is Bonnie's mum, would rent a room out to a boarder to make ends meet. But she said this boarder was strange. We would sit in the lounge room and Bonnie would sit on his knee. And from time to time, I saw him fondle Bonnie." She said, "I've never told anyone that." But she said, "I can't tell you the name of the boarder other than he lived in the house." So here's a girl who's come forward some 20 years later, and she was only 6 at the time, and it made a big impression on her that something wasn't right. Well, the next step from Kylie's statement is, let's identify who this boarder is. One of the sayings that I have is, the answer is always in the file. What does that actually mean? It means the name of the person responsible. The killer's name is more likely to be there. For whatever reason, the original investigators may have discounted that name, may have overlooked it, may not have looked at the alibi properly, or someone might have given that person an alibi, which was actually not true. So in a cold case, it's important to go back, look at your previous suspects, look at your persons of interest, look at the names in the file, and I'll guarantee you, as an investigator, the name of the killer will be there. I had a new detective on the crew. His name was Tim Day. We were 20 years on, and finding the boarder's name was not going to be easy. It was about getting Tim Day to reread the file. Look at all the names, see if we could establish who the boarder was.
Tim and Ron worked really well together. They had each other's brains sort of synchronising with each other, and you need someone that's, you know, with you and can, you know, if you walk away for a day to have a break, that person will do exactly what you want them to do for the day. That friendship and that connection as a work colleague, you know, that you could trust.
We could have easily gone and asked Marion, but at that stage the investigation is partly covert. We're trying to establish who the boarder is. But the clock is ticking. I made a commitment to Dennis. I don't know how long he's got, but time is not on my side. Dennis would ring me every week. He'd want an update on the investigation. You couldn't give him the minute detail, but I could give him an overall and say, I think we're going in the right direction.
Once Ron becomes committed to a homicide job, he becomes totally involved. He totally gives all of himself, 100% to the families, to the victim. Even though the victim is gone, he still believes that that victim needs a person to find out what happened to them and to have their back as well. He would give 100%, and that's Ron totally.
If you become emotionally involved and you become emotionally connected to a family, and it's a family member that's responsible, you're going to blow the investigation. So you need to have some distance. This case of Bonnie Clark does make me emotional. I'd made a personal commitment to Dennis. I knew that he was dying, but it's about staying focused. What is the end goal? The end goal is to find out who is responsible for this tragic murder and rape of a 6-year-old. Finally, after going through the file, Tim found the boarder's name. It was Malcolm Clark. But he wasn't related to the family. He wasn't related to Marion, Dennis or Bonnie. He was somebody who, I guess, worked in casual labour, but eventually he became a projectionist at the Greater Union Theatre. Well, from the file, it was clear that Malcolm Clark wasn't living at the house at the time of Bonnie's death. Marion said that on the night that Bonnie died, the night of Bonnie's murder, she'd left the back door open so the dog could go outside. But what that did is it left the door open for the killer to come inside.
It didn't take me long to work out there could only be one person who could have actually gotten into the house in the middle of the night, undetected, you know, by the dog in particular, and gotten through the maze that I'd sort of set up for the dog to get in and out. The only people that lived there would have known about. There's only one person could possibly have done it. Malcolm Clark. I told the police all this. I don't think he believed me. In fact, I'm sure he didn't believe me.
Quite clearly, as you read through the file, you can see that Marion has been accused of killing her own daughter when she says, I didn't do it. But that was the constant thrust for many years that she was responsible. She had lost respect for the police because no one believed her. What I say in an investigation is you must have an open mind. Don't have tunnel vision or you will go wrong, because the tunnel vision is straight on Marion without actually going and looking at other possibilities. So how are we going to eliminate Marion? She says, well, I didn't do it. I suggest that we give Marion a polygraph. So we say to her, well, we don't think that you're involved, but I have to be satisfied that if we ever got to the stage of running through a court process, that I could totally eliminate you.
A polygraph is simply an instrument that measures physiological reactivity to a given question.
So that's okay, off I go for the polygraph.
I expect everyone who walks into my office to undergo a test to be nervous, whether they're telling the truth or not.
Because it came through completely clear and everything. Oh, good, you've got no involvement. I said, see, I've proved my innocence.
A polygraph is not admissible, can't be used in evidence. But I thought that the polygraph gave me that confidence that I could stand up if the defence ever asked me the question, well, how did you eliminate her? Well, she had a polygraph and she passed with flying colours. Now it's up then for a jury to accept it and put what weight they want to put on it.
So from then on, they could take the investigation further by completely eliminating me as a suspect. And I just thought, oh, yes, something is finally gonna happen.
We've researched the file. We now have suspect number one, Malcolm Clark. The next step is to look into his background. I can't believe what we find. It's like a light bulb moment. You write fiction about this, but this is fact. What we found, I couldn't even believe. For almost 20 years, Bonnie Clark's mother, Marion, was the main suspect in her 6-year-old daughter's death. We gave her a lie detector test. She passed, and as a result, we eliminated her. But I had a new suspect, Malcolm Clark. And guess what? He was a boarder that lived with Marion and Bonnie. But he wasn't living at the house at the time of Bonnie's death.
Clark had moved out, a few months before that. But whilst he was there, Bonnie and Malcolm got on well. At no stage ever did I feel there was ever a problem between them. They'd natter on, like a brother and a sister would. She was not afraid of him, not at all. If she had been, I certainly would have known about it. She would never have held back. And he would have known about it too, because she would not hold back, not a bit. So, yeah, when the realisation came as to the only person it could be, it was bad, because I had invited him into the house. But, that was a question the police asked. Well, if she wasn't scared of him, why would you think he'd do it? Because he's the only one that could get in.
The next thing that Detective Tim Day does, he does a criminal history check. He checks the background of Malcolm Clark. He says, Ron, you won't believe this. Malcolm Clark was convicted of killing a young woman, Teresa Crow, in 1980.
Disco girl Teresa Crow was found to have died by strangulation in her rented loft behind a building in Chapel Street, Prahran in May 1980.
He wasn't a fine specimen of a man, and not the sort of man that I think Teresa Crowe, who would have had lots of men flocking after her, would be interested in. But he did manage to talk his way into her apartment one night, and he claims they had consensual sex, and that he was lying on top of her, and he's a big, heavy man, and she was a tiny little thing. And he claimed that she died accidentally while he was on top of her. Police didn't believe it, but the jury did, in that they found him not guilty of murder and guilty of manslaughter, which meant that he got a much lesser sentence.
So we got the file out of Teresa Crowe. There were striking similarities between the death of Teresa Crowe and Bonnie. We knew from Teresa Crowe's death that her body had been washed. And we know from Bonnie's that her body has been washed. In 1980, Malcolm Clark kills Teresa Crowe in a loft in Paran. So in 1982, he goes and boards with Marion Clark. In 1983, he's arrested for an aggravated rape. As a result, police search his house. From that point, they gather sufficient evidence to also charge him with the death of Teresa Crowe. But also, there is a card at Malcolm's house that's been written to Bonnie Clark. Now, at this stage, he's on remand for the aggravated rape. He's on remand for the murder of Teresa Crowe. The original investigators go out to the prison and have a conversation with him. There are some notes of that conversation. It goes something like this. Malcolm, we're here to talk to you about the death of Bonnie Clark. Is there anything that you can tell us about Bonnie's death? He says, I do remember the night of her death. And I can tell you on that night, I was a projectionist at the Greater Union Theatre in Russell Street. So I have nothing to do with her death. So they accept that, and he's never looked at again in relation to the death of Bonnie Clark. Detective Tim Day went back to Greater Union some 20 years later, and luck happened that they had the records of people who worked. On the night that Bonnie died, Malcolm Clark did not work. So that is a significant piece of evidence. Now, is he mistaken or is it a deliberate lie? If it's a deliberate lie, and he's lying because it would implicate him in the crime, you can use that as consciousness of guilt. But the bottom line is, he didn't work, so he doesn't have an alibi. Malcolm Clark went to prison for the death of Teresa Crowe. He served 10 or 11 years and was released. So the conviction in relation to the aggravated rape is predominantly served in the 10 or 11 year period he does for manslaughter. So by early 1994-95, he's back out in the community to live his life as normal. Tim and I found out that by 2001, Clark was living in a relationship with a lady called Lorraine. He's caring for old people in elderly home, and he's also volunteering on the Puffing Billy, which is a train that runs from Belgrave to Emerald and is a large tourist attraction in the Dandenongs. So how can we actually get into Malcolm's head? How am I going to engage with this person? First of all, it's about gathering intelligence. What's he currently doing? What's he on about? Maybe I can use an undercover operative. So we had an undercover operative become a guard. He did the course and he became a guard on the Puffing Billy and he worked with Malcolm. already knew that Malcolm had an interest in photography. So guess what? The undercover officer was someone who had an interest in photography. So in the end, the two of them are taking photos on Puffing Billy. And Malcolm Clark was telling him how he enjoyed taking photos of young girls. And then the undercover would say to Malcolm, "Oh, you're going to catch the train home? Oh, yeah, I'm going to catch the train home to Box Hill. I'll tell you what, Malcolm, I'll drive you home." So they formed a relationship over a reasonable period of time. An undercover operation is delicate, many things to consider, but an undercover operation is simply this. It's about finding evidence to either implicate or exculpate the suspect. So in other words, is there sufficient evidence gathered to charge them, or is there evidence which shows they're not involved? So if you go in with a preconceived idea and you say to your undercover operative, "You must get a confession from this person," they go in with the wrong idea. It's simple. It's a search for the truth in accordance with the specifications of the law.
In my view, shows like CSI and others have exposed too much of police methodology, and there was a particular undercover method that had proved successful around the world, and it was successful here. And unfortunately, that method has been exposed through a couple of high-profile court cases, which police opposed at the time and lost. Now, look, normally as a journalist, I'm all for open courts and, not keeping things secret, but I just think every now and then some of the methodologies that police use to catch criminals shouldn't be made public.
What I can tell you is that during the 3-month undercover operation, Malcolm Clark told the undercover operative 2 or 3 key things. That indicated to us that Malcolm Clark was more than likely responsible for the death of Bonnie. After starting the re-investigation into the murder of 6-year-old Bonnie Clark, we identified a suspect, Malcolm Clark, who was a boarder at the house. We engaged an undercover operative to gain the trust of Malcolm. After about 3 months, Malcolm thought that the undercover operative was his best friend. I thought that was the key to unlock the truth about what happened to Bonnie. The undercover operative was with Malcolm, and the undercover operative asked him a question. Malcolm lowered his head, sat there for a minute, and then he said, "I killed Bonnie." I walked in through the back door and I stabbed her. And he went into some detail about it, but predominantly the opening line was, "I've carried this for a long time, but I killed Bonnie Clark." Malcolm was brought to the rear of a police complex at St Kilda Road, where Tim Day and I arrested him. So we get Malcolm up and we sit him in an interview room in the homicide squad. We have a camera there, so we're going to video record the interview, which he's aware of. He's been given his rights and he's been cautioned. And then he says, "I want to do something before we start." So I indicate to the cameraman to start the video. He says, "I want to ring my partner." So we give him the phone. He says, "You can sit here and you can listen to what I say." So he rings his partner, Lorraine. "Is that you, Lorraine? I'm at the homicide squad. I've got to tell you I'm not coming home. I've been arrested for Bonnie Clark's murder. I want you to do something. I want you to pack up my Puffing Billy uniform, and I want you to ring Bill and get him to come and collect the uniform, tell him to take me off the roster because I'm not coming home. I'm going to jail for a long time and I'll see you later. He hung up and then he participated in an interview. And he made a full confession about what happened to Bonnie that night. He said it was about 11:30 at night. It was dark. He said, I hadn't been at work. I was never at work that night. He says the back door was open. I saw the dog, but the dog didn't bark. I walked down the passageway and I know my way around the house. I'm not sure why, but I went to the kitchen and I got a knife. And I remember going into Bonnie's bedroom. The next thing I remember is I'm over the top of Bonnie. I don't know why, but something overcome me. And I'm fondling her, and Bonnie woke up. So I got the knife and I stabbed her. I stabbed her once. I then put the pyjamas down the side of the bed between the wall. I went and I got a cloth with some water and I wiped Bonnie's body down. And then I went out the back door and I went back home to Brunswick. But I've got to tell you, I don't know what overcome me that night. I really didn't mean to kill her.
Malcolm Clark shared his evil secret in a taped interview, having broken his silence to undercover police.
Well, I was relieved he had reconfirmed his confession. Sometimes when someone confesses to an undercover police officer, there's always an argument about agent provocateur or using an agent to induce a confession. There is absolutely no doubt what he told us that night was a true confession. Because he said two things which we hadn't released to the media, was that Bonnie's body had been washed and that the pyjamas were down the side of the bed. So we knew that he was actually responsible.
And I got a phone call from Tim, and it was just a very brief one. He said, look, just to let you know, we have arrested Clark and I'm just taking him in to question him. I'll talk to you later. And it was just a case I just sat down and cried. It was relief.
He was charged and the trial started somewhere around 16 months after. And from memory, the trial went for about 5 weeks.
It's been terrible, a terrible ordeal, and I would hate anyone else to go through the ordeal that I have gone through for 20 years. I would like this gentleman to be found guilty, because I think he is.
And then the jury considered its verdict and came back with guilty.
The verdict was a relief. Justice for Bonnie had been found. I'd been vindicated. It was over. It was finally finished.
For a long time, people in the community believed that Marion had killed her daughter. Police officers believed that she had killed her daughter. So she went on and she remarried, but in her mind, no one believed her. So I think whilst the result was fantastic and we convicted Malcolm Clark, I think personally for Marion, the key thing was that she was vindicated and proved innocent.
Today, Bonnie Clark's father was clearly jubilant that justice had been served.
It's about giving that family an answer, and then sadly, you move on to the next case. But you still have contact until such time as Dennis passed away. Probably 2 months after that. But I think it was fantastic that we were able to do that before he died.
As two fathers, they connected in an emotional way. You want someone like Ron to be able to help you through the tragedy and give you the answers. I'm so glad he actually was able to give the dad something.
It shows the value of using the media. It was literally one paragraph on page 3, and it prompts Kelly to tell her boyfriend and her boyfriend to tell me and me to tell Ron, and Ron to then go interview Kelly, give the file to Tim Day, and then the crime gets solved. Simple as that. When I say simple as that, a lot of work, but without that gem of, I think it was the lodger, that crime probably would never have been solved.
It's nice to be back here after 15, 16 years.
Oh, you've no idea how good it is to see her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've lost a bit of hair since then. I know that nothing's going to bring Bonnie back, but it's about, I think, a release, about an answer. Marion's surrounded now by her children, who she loves dearly. And I know that she can now walk around the community with her head high, having answers, without people looking at her thinking, you know what, I think she killed her daughter. Like, it was very difficult for your mum. Like, I know you may not have known some of the circumstances, but, you know, to live with something, I suppose, for 18 years, and people say, well, there's closure. There's never closure. Yeah. Right?
Oh, so American that I hate that word.
There is only answers, and then you've got to learn to deal to cope with that.
I mean, how do you close the book on something you love so much?
No, you can't. No.
You don't.
So
Ron and Tim are two amazing guys. They really are. Dedicated, totally dedicated, very compassionate and wonderfully kind and dogged in getting the answers.
cold case is not about being critical of the first process. All right. Nice to see you again.
Oh, so good.
It's about having a new set of eyes and looking at it. Solving this case was personally rewarding for me and very satisfying. I've taught young detectives for many years, and I always say to them, the answer is always in the file. So for those who work with me on this case, that mantra came out to be true.